Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky warned that Russia is preparing to deploy a significant number of troops to Belarus, which could be used for an invasion of a NATO country. He made the remarks in an interview with The Economist, published on February the 12th. No one understands what war is until it comes to your home. I don't want to scare anyone, but it will come, Zelensky said. As the world is slowly stopping Russian President Vladimir Putin today, slowly, too slowly, it will come, and that's a fact. Citing Ukrainian intelligence, Zelensky said Putin is forming 10 to 15 divisions, totaling about 100,000 troops, to be sent to Belarus for military exercises, just as they were in the lead-up to Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. He, Putin, will tell you that this is training, exercises near the border of Ukraine, as it was before. But believe me, this is the preparation of a bridgehead for offensive actions, Zelensky said. Who told you that he will go to Ukraine? Who told you that he won't go to Lithuania, to Poland? It may be that while we are still standing, he is preparing a bridgehead for a large number of troops and simply takes this bridgehead and goes in a different direction. He goes to Poland, goes to Lithuania and occupies them. Why doesn't anyone think that will happen? He added, since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, NATO countries have been bracing for potential aggression from the Kremlin. Some European leaders believe an attack in the coming years is a real possibility. Russia could pose a direct military threat to NATO countries approximately 5 years after the end or freezing of the war in Ukraine, according to the report Forecast 2024, published by the Danish Foreign and Military Intelligence Service. In the document, the department assessed the military threat from the Russian Federation to the Danish United Kingdom, which in addition to Denmark includes Greenland and the Faroe Islands. Danish intelligence came to the conclusion that there is currently no threat from Russia, but it may increase in the coming years. The agency believes that Russia is preparing for a potential confrontation with NATO. This does not mean that a decision has been made to start such a war, but Russia is arming itself and building up its capabilities to make such a decision, the report said. In January, the German tabloid Bild reported that Germany's defense ministry was considering a scenario in which Russia could strike NATO's eastern flank in 2025. The Kremlin dismissed the report as fake news.
U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance met with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte in Munich on Friday, pushing President Donald Trump's desire to see more defense spending in the military alliance. According to Associated Press, Vance will lead the U.S. delegation to the Munich Security Conference that starts Friday in the southern German city, where world leaders and diplomats are gathering amid intense concern and uncertainty over the Trump administration's foreign policy. We want to make sure NATO is built for the future, Vance said in a meeting with Rutte. Vance also said he wanted to see NATO step up so the U.S. could focus more on challenges in East Asia. Rutte said he was looking forward to discussing how to bring lasting peace to Ukraine. Trump upended years of steadfast U.S. support for Ukraine during his call with Russia's President Vladimir Putin on Wednesday, and has been vague about his specific intentions, other than suggesting that a deal will likely result in Ukraine being forced to cede territory that Russia has seized since it annexed Crimea in 2014.
Good to see you. All right, is that everybody? Okay. Well, welcome everybody. We're, of course, pleased to be joined by a delegation from NATO, especially Secretary General Rutte. Thank you for being here. This is actually our second meeting, the first right before the inauguration, and the second now here at the Munich Security Conference. Of course, we're going to talk about NATO, and particularly the President's desire to see NATO spend a little bit more resources on defense. And I know that's something Secretary General Rutte agrees with me on. We're going to talk, of course, about the Ukraine-Russia conflict and how to bring it to a negotiated settlement. And I'm sure we'll talk about some other areas of cooperation, too. I mean, my high-level argument to these folks is, look, Europe is, of course, a very important ally of the United States. NATO is a very important military alliance, of course, that we're the most significant part of. But we want to make sure that NATO is actually built for the future. And we think a big part of that is ensuring that NATO does a little bit more burden sharing in Europe so that the United States can focus on some of our challenges in East Asia. So we'll have a good conversation. We have great people here, and we're thrilled to have them.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vice President, and it's a pleasure to see you again. And I want to thank you for the American people for everything you are doing to keep the whole world safe, basically. And I know there are many theaters in the world you really have to take your attention to. So I do understand the issue of burden sharing. It is crucial. also want to thank you personally for everything you have done over the years in engaging with Europe. It has been noted, you have been here before, and it's really important, and I look forward also from that perspective to our talks, and on Europe stepping up, the European part of NATO stepping up. You are absolutely right, it has to be done. We have to grow up in that sense and spend much more. We also have to discuss the defense industrial base. Of course, this is a problem we have both in the US and in the rest of NATO. We are simply not producing enough. We are not keeping up with the Russians and the Chinese. And then, of course, Ukraine. How to bring Ukraine to a lasting peace. And no Minsk again, so it has to be lasting. Putin should never try it again. And how to get them into a place of maximum strength when the talks start. So, a lot to discuss. We're looking forward also to build a relationship.
Great. Likewise. Thanks, Steve. Thank you. All right. Thank you.
According to Associated Press, NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte said on Thursday that the alliance remained united and that Ukraine would be involved in peace talks. What we are very clearly united about is that, first of all, we have to make sure that when talks starts, Ukraine is in the best possible position. And obviously this is about Ukraine. So Ukraine will be involved in any way and whatsoever, Rutte said in Brussels after a meeting of NATO defense ministers. Earlier, several NATO allies stressed that Ukraine and Europe must not be cut out of any peace negotiations, as U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth denied that the United States is betraying the war-ravaged country. European governments are reeling after the Trump administration signaled that it is planning face-to-face talks with Russia on ending the Ukraine war without involving them, insisted that Kyiv should not join NATO, and said that it's up to Europe to protect itself and Ukraine from whatever Russia might do next. There can be no negotiation about Ukraine without Ukraine. And Ukraine's voice must be at the heart of any talks, UK Defence Secretary John Healey told reporters at NATO headquarters, as the organization's 32 defense ministers met for talks on Ukraine. Hegseth denied that the US has betrayed Ukraine by launching negotiations about its future without Kyiv's full involvement. After talks with Putin and then Zelenski, Trump said on Wednesday he would probably meet in person with the Russian leader in the near term, possibly in Saudi Arabia. The European Union's foreign policy chief, Kaja Kallas, expressed surprise that Hegseth and Trump had listed what appeared to be concessions to Russia even before talks have begun in earnest. Hegseth warned that the war in Ukraine must be a wake-up call for NATO's European allies to spend more on their own defense budgets. 23 of the 32 member countries were forecast to have met the organization's guideline of spending 2% of gross domestic product on their national defense budgets last year, but a third still do not. But Hegseth's French counterpart, Sébastien Lecornu, described the wrangling over greater defense spending as a false debate, saying that governments and parliaments across Europe are already approving more weapons purchases and bigger military budgets while helping Ukraine stave off an invasion. Lecornu warned that the future of NATO itself is now in question.